Hi, welcome to Intersoft Solutions video tutorial. My name is Nicholas Lee. In this video, I will explain to you how to prepare your PC for Android development. Before you continue, it is important that you have properly installed Mobile Studio as well as Xamarin platforms. You can find the video on how to install Mobile Studio for Windows in a separate video. To develop Android applications, you can either build and debug directly to an Android device, or you can use the Android emulator, but with certain limitations. You can find a complete list of limitations on this site. In this video, we will create a Crosslight enabled application and build the application to an Android emulator with virtual machine acceleration feature enabled, or also known as VTX. In short, what is VTX and why is it important? In early versions of Android developers will have a hard time with the Android emulator. It takes a long time to build a simple app and run them on the emulator. Even if you have a PC with high specifications, without VTX, the Android emulator tends to run very sluggish and slow. However, since the introduction of Android 4.0.3 or API level 15, developers can now take advantage of the Intel-based Android emulator image, which is available through Android SDK Manager that fully supports the virtual machine acceleration technology. To learn more about VTX technology, go to Intel's website at arc.intel.com/products/virtualization technology. If you are using an Intel-based PC, you should be able to take advantage of the VTX technology. However, you will need to go to your motherboard BIOS settings and enable Intel virtualization technology, or sometimes written as VTX support. The Android developers documentation outlines the virtual machine acceleration feature in great detail. You can find the article at the following site. If you are trying to install the Intel Hardware Accelerated Execution Manager but get an error saying that VTX is not supported, perhaps you haven't enabled the feature on your BIOS settings yet. After you have successfully configured your machine by following the article, we are going to create a new VTX enabled AVD, or short for Android Virtual Device. Since you have properly installed Xamarin platforms, by default you should have Android SDK Manager as well as Android Virtual Device Manager, or in short AVD Manager, installed along Xamarin Studio. First, let's open up the Android SDK Manager. Press the Start button. Type in SDK and go to SDK Manager. If you want to create an AVD image with virtual machine acceleration feature, you will need to download the Intel Atom base image, which is available starting from Android 4.0.3. You will also need to download the SDK platform as well as the Android SDK tools, as well as the build tools. After you have done so, open up AVD Manager. We are going to create a new AVD with virtual machine acceleration feature enabled. Hit New. Give it a name, anything you want. I will set the device to a resolution that's not so big, with a target of 4.0.3, with the CPU set to Intel Atom. This is the image that we have downloaded earlier in the SDK Manager. I will disable this option and give the emulator a 64 megabytes SD card. The back camera is emulated with host GPU enabled. This will enable the virtual machine acceleration feature. Let's start the emulator. While we are waiting for the emulator to launch, let's create a new Crosslight enabled project that we're going to run on this emulator. I'm going to create a new blank project and run the Android version of the project to the emulator. You might not be able to load Windows Phone projects properly at first. To load Windows Phone projects, you will need to install Windows Phone 8 SDK first. Preparing your machine for Windows Phone 8 development is covered in a separate video. Note that the solution created using Visual Studio is fully compatible with Xamarin Studio. So, if you have a Mac, you can share the same solution and open the solution using Xamarin Studio. However, you cannot develop Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8 applications using Xamarin Studio. Set the Android project as a startup project, then hit Run. During the first time, it will take a while, since API platform frameworks and mono Android frameworks will need to be installed. This is a one-time process. You can assume the emulator as an Android device that runs separately on your system. You don't need to close the Android emulator each time you wish to rebuild and redebug your application. The Android emulator will automatically uninstall the previous version and reinstall the new version application package for you. Now you have successfully run a Crosslight enabled application to an Android emulator with virtual machine acceleration feature. You can also run the applications and debug them directly to the device to see your application running in a real scenario device. For a guide on how to use your Android hardware for development and deployment, you can see it in the Android developers documentation at this site. In this video, I have shown you how to configure your Windows for Android development. In the next video, I will show you how to prepare your Windows machine for iOS development. If you need more information, drop us a mail at technical@intersoftpt.com. You can find discussions related to Crosslight and Mobile Studio in our forums at intersoftpt.com/community/crosslight. If this video helped you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos.